Hey everyone, welcome back. Daniel JS here with another video on the JavaScript Basic Algorithms challenges from freecodecamp.org. In this series, we're going to go through the JavaScript Basic Algorithm Scripting challenges. And also, with that being said, if you're a complete beginner on JavaScript, I definitely recommend checking out my other series where we go through just the basic JavaScript section. Okay, so definitely a really good place to check out if you are a complete beginner. Okay, so without further ado, let's head over to the basic algorithm scripting section. And at this point, you'll definitely want to make sure that you are signed in so that you can follow along. All right, so the next one that we're going to go through is how to reverse a string in JavaScript. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on this one right here. Now, if you're just tuning in and maybe you haven't seen how these challenges are set up, let's just do a quick walkthrough. So whenever you click on a challenge, you're going to see a section to the left where it gives you a description of the challenge. There's a few buttons right here that you can choose from. We typically use the Run the Tests button, and this is what executes your code and ensures that your code does meet the technical requirements. The technical requirements that are going to be tested on are actually listed right here. So these are the various things that FreeCodeCamp is going to be checking for when they run your code. On the right side, we have a text editor, and there's typically some starter code. In some cases, there will be some starter code that we'll be working with. And then down below, we can see the output, or the console, if you will, JavaScript console emulator that kind of gives us a readout. So anytime you need to console log something out or something like that, you'll see that output listed here. Okay, so right here it says that we need to reverse the provided string, and you may need to turn the string into an array before you can reverse it, and your result must be a string. So there's not a lot of information right here. So let's kind of go through what we have to start with. So it shows that we have a function right here called reverse string. That function is taking a single argument as or a single value as its argument, and you can see that there's a parameter right here that's been named str. This is called a parameter. The parameter is what takes the value that gets passed in at the time that the function is being called. So on line 5, we're essentially calling the function, right? We call it by referencing it by its identifier name, which is called reverse string. We add the 2 parentheses, and then we pass in a value. We call this an argument. That argument gets assigned to this parameter, which then becomes a local variable from within the function body. The function body is pretty much this part that goes in between these 2 curly braces, okay? So the objective that we're trying to make is we're going to take this string that's getting passed in, and we need to return the result of reversing the sequence of characters in this string. So for example, if we call this function passing in the value hello, we should see the result of hello spelled backwards. And as you can see, they have an example right here. So we got to think about how we can reverse a string. Okay, now a string is considered an immutable type in JavaScript, which basically means you cannot mutate a string. However, you can create substrings from a string. And what I mean by that is you can actually break up a string into individual pieces, and you can arrange those pieces within a list-like structure. We call this an array. And then you can reverse the order of those pieces so that they're basically, well, they're reversed, okay? And then you can also join all those pieces back together and then essentially creating a new string from the reversed pieces. So this is one way you could do this. Another way you could probably do it is you could construct a brand new string by iterating over the string sequence. So you could actually write a loop that pretty much accesses each individual character, but you would have to probably start from the very end of the string. So you would have to start with the O, you would take this O, and then you would add it to a brand new string. Then you would have to take the L, add that to the brand new string, and then followed by the next L, followed by the E, followed by the H. And you could actually build a brand new string just using the characters from the string that is given. So that's another way that you could do it as well. But yeah, there's no way that you could just take the string and you could just, reverse it in place. So that's the important thing that you want to know starting out. So one of the ways that I like to handle this is we can actually split the string into an array of substrings, okay? And there's a really cool method for that. If you just look up array dot, actually, sorry, it's not array, it's string dot split. So if you look up string dot split, and I always like going to the MDN page for this because MDN is pretty much like the de facto guide for JavaScript. So right here it says the split method divides a string into an ordered list of substrings. Okay, so it puts these substrings into an array and returns the array. So for example, if you had a string that looks like this, let me just zoom in. If you have a string that looks like this and you call .split on it, it will actually produce an array of substrings. And now this is not the best example, but what we could do is we could open up our JavaScript console, in which, by the way, if you just do Command Option J on your MacBook keyboard, or I guess that would be Control Alt J on a Windows machine, let me just clear these errors out, you have access to a JavaScript console. So right here, I could say hello dot split like this, and I'm going to pass in a single, well, actually an empty string. I'm going to pass in an empty string because I actually want to split on every character. That's essentially what I'm saying right here. So when I run this, notice how it produces a list of substrings. Isn't that interesting? And there's another method that we can check out. It's called array.reverse. Array.reverse. Array.reverse allows for us to reverse an array in place just by calling .reverse on it. So take, for example, you have an array that looks like this, where you have 3 strings inside of it. And if you were to call .reverse on it, you'll actually see the order of those values reversed in place, okay? So, so we could essentially chain on, we call this method chaining, we could chain on reverse right after we split the string into an array of substrings. So why don't we do this? I'm going to console log, right here. Let's put str.split. Okay. Notice that when I call .split on it, we can see the output down here. So that split hello into substrings, and then watch this. I'm going to do a .reverse right after that. And notice how that actually reversed the order of those strings. And then there's another method that can be called on an array called join. So if you actually call .join, and we're going to join on no character. So I'm going to put an empty string in there, and look at that. Beautiful. So that is pretty much, I would say, one of the best solutions for something like this. So just to walk through that one more time, we can split a string into an array of substrings. We can then reverse the order of those substrings, and then we can join them back together into a single string. In this process that I'm doing, we call this method chaining. Method chaining. This is also, it taps into something called fluent programming, which is where you're chaining on various methods, getting a final result because of that. So all we have to do just to pull this together is I'm going to copy this section right here. I'm going to copy this part that comes after the str. Let me just cut this to my clipboard. Let's remove the console log. And now we're just going to return the result of calling str.split.reverse.join. Okay? And when I run all the tests, we should see the result. And boom! There we go. So again, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And also be sure to subscribe so that you can catch the next video once I get that released. Thank you so much.